It started with a single woman. Her name was Frau Troffea. In July 1518, in the city of Strasbourg, she stepped out of her house and began to dance. There was no music, no celebration, just a frantic, silent movement that lasted for hours, then days. By the end of the week, 34 others had joined her. By the end of the month, over 400 people were caught in a rhythmic nightmare they couldn't escape. They weren't partying, they were screaming for help, their feet bleeding, their hearts failing. This wasn't a festival, it was the dancing plague of 1518, and for many, the only way to stop was to die. To understand how terrifying this was, you have to realize that this wasn't just fidgety feet. These people were in a trance. Historical records from physicians and monks describe victims who were clearly in agony, but physically unable to stop their limbs from moving. Local authorities were baffled. Today, we'd call a doctor or a psychologist, but in 1518, the city council consulted experts who gave the worst advice in medical history. They ruled out astrological or supernatural causes and decided the dancers simply had hot blood. The cure? They told them to keep dancing. They didn't just tell them to dance, they facilitated it. The city hired professional pipers and drummers. They opened up 2 dance halls and even built a wooden stage in the center of the market. They thought if the victims danced day and night, the fever would burn itself out. It was like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. The plan backfired spectacularly. The music and the stage only encouraged more people to join in. At the height of the plague, it's estimated that 15 people were dying every single day from strokes, heart attacks, and pure exhaustion. So what causes a whole city to lose its mind? For centuries, historians have debated 3 main theories. The ergot theory. This suggests the town's grain was infected with a mold called ergot. It's a natural precursor to LSD. It can cause twitching and hallucinations. However, most experts argue that ergotism usually cuts off circulation, making it impossible to dance for days on end. The St. Vitus curse. In the 1500s, there was a strong religious belief that St. Vitus had the power to curse people with a dancing mania. In a time of extreme poverty and famine, the sheer fear of this curse might have triggered a mass psychogenic illness. Mass hysteria. This is the most likely culprit. Strasbourg in 1518 was a pressure cooker of stress. Famine, smallpox, and syphilis were tearing through the population. When Frau Troffea started dancing, it may have acted as a psychological break for a traumatized public. Finally, realizing the stage and musicians were a disaster, the city changed tactics. They banned public dancing entirely. The victims were bundled into wagons and taken to a shrine dedicated to St. Vitus, where their feet were placed in small red shoes and they were led in circles around an altar. Strangely, it worked. The plague began to fade. By early autumn, the twitching stopped, the streets went quiet, and the survivors returned to their homes, likely having no memory of why they had spent weeks dancing themselves toward the grave. The dancing plague of 1518 remains one of history's most bizarre examples of the power of the human mind, and how, under enough pressure, the line between reality and madness can simply snap. The next time you feel like you just can't stop dancing to a catchy song, just be glad you aren't in 16th century France. Thanks for watching. If you want to dive deeper into the weird side of history, hit that subscribe button. Until next time.